Hey everyone, welcome back. If you're new, my name is Mel. I like to share tons of cooking videos on this channel. It is one of my favorite things to do. This week I'm sharing 4 really delicious one-pot meals. They are definitely crowd pleasers and best of all, hardly any cleanup. We are getting started with this garlic bread pot pie. This was my first time making this and I absolutely loved it. I have some black pepper, salt, garlic powder here, and then I'm also using a pack of mushrooms, minced garlic. I have some olive oil and butter. I'm also using heavy whipping cream, a can of sliced carrots, which you can use fresh carrots if you want. I just wanted to make sure mine would be soft. And I also have a big container of chicken broth, all-purpose flour. There's about half a bag of frozen sweet peas. And I also have 2 chicken breasts and then half of an onion that I'm going to dice up. And I also have this celery. I buy this when it's on sale and then I chop it up and then I freeze it because I do not use celery that often. So this is what works for me. And I almost forgot, I also have a box of Texas toast here. It's just the regular garlic ones. The first thing I'm going to do is get my oven preheating to 350 degrees, and then I'm going to melt about 2 tablespoons of butter in my cast iron skillet. You don't have to use a cast iron skillet, you just need to make sure that you're using a pan that you can put into your oven that is oven safe. And if you don't have that, you can easily transfer this, but then that would take it from a one-pot meal. But these are my 2 chicken breasts. I just diced them up and threw them in. And I am not measuring here, just putting a nice layer over of pepper, salt, and garlic powder. You can always add more seasoning later if it's not enough for you. And I have some mushrooms that I sliced up. Most of the package, there were a few that were bad, so I threw those away, but most of the mushrooms, and then my half of an onion I diced up as well. I'm going to go ahead and remove my chicken after it has finished cooking. Obviously, I added butter earlier, and there are the drippings from the chicken, but I added a little bit more butter in, probably a tablespoon. Just gonna let that melt, and I'm gonna throw my mushrooms and my onions in here and let those cook. That was only cooking for about 2 to 3 minutes before I added in my celery, and I would say this is probably close to half a cup of celery, maybe a little bit more, but you can use more or less, it's totally up to you. And again, this was about 2 or 3 minutes later. I'm going to go ahead and dump in my can of carrots and just kind of break those up a little bit because they are pretty big slices. After I break those up a little bit, I'm going to add about a tablespoon of minced garlic and just let that cook for just a minute and let it get fragrant. So I sat this garlic bread out earlier so it could partially thaw. I didn't want it to be completely frozen, but I did want it to be soft enough for me to cut. And I'm just cubing that into little squares, and you could also do your own garlic bread at home. That would be easy to do with just some bread and garlic butter. But I already had these because we were making lasagna around this time, so I went ahead and just used these, and honestly, these worked perfect. Now I'm adding about a 1/4 cup of flour into my carrots and onion and mushroom mixture. I'm going to stir that around and combine that really nicely. Now I'm going to add in 1 cup of heavy cream, followed by 1.5 cups of chicken broth, and then I'm going to add in some salt and pepper. You can do this to your taste. When it thickens up, you can taste it and see if you need more salt and pepper. I also want to mention, if you have any tips on cast iron skillets, please leave them in the comments for me below. I am totally new to this. I did research and figure out what I needed to do, how to season it properly, all that. But my parents, neither my mom's house or my dad's house, ever cooked with a cast iron pan as far as I can remember, so I'm kind of just figuring it out on my own. So any tips, tricks, or advice you have, please leave that below. I'd love to hear about it. Now I'm going to go ahead and add in my cooked chicken. I do want to mention you can also use turkey for this recipe. That would also be just fine. I'm going to go ahead and mix this back in. It's going to warm back through when we stick it in the oven. And I'm going to also add in my half bag of frozen peas. I'm just going to stir that together really well, combine it, and then we are going to just flatten this out across the pan, and it's going in the oven for about 10 minutes. Once you pull that out of the oven, you are just going to take your garlic bread that has not been cooked and put that right across the top. You need to try to keep it in a single layer so that they can crisp up. If you bury them, then they're just not going to get very crispy. The bottoms of these will be a little soft because they are touching the liquid, but the tops do crisp up really, really nicely. My pan went back in the oven for an additional 7 to 10 minutes, or until your garlic bread is turning a nice golden color. And this was my finished product right here. I went ahead and started serving it out. This was very good. Oh my gosh, I love this so much. It was such a great twist on a traditional dish. My husband, not a big fan because it had carrots in it, but what can you do? Can't be perfect every night. Up next, I'm doing this skillet lasagna, which my husband was a huge fan of. I have 4 cloves of minced garlic, and then I also have 1 pound of ground turkey. I'm using a lean ground turkey, but you can also use a lean ground beef. And then I have 8 ounces of bow tie pasta, 1 jar of this Prego Farmer's Market pasta sauce. You can use any type of pasta sauce. I have obviously you can tell I filled this up more than 2 cups because I knew I'd probably need a little bit more. So there's probably 2.5-ish cups of beef broth, 1 cup of ricotta, 2 cups of shredded mozzarella cheese, and then I'm using red pepper flakes, garlic, and parsley. And then this is half of a diced yellow onion. I'm going to start off by getting my ground turkey started. I'm also going to throw my minced garlic and my chopped up onion in here and just let that cook together. And then I am also going to season this with a little salt and pepper. I didn't include those in the beginning and original ingredients because most people do have salt and pepper at home, but I decided I wanted to kind of season up my ground turkey a little bit. So I do want to know what you think about this, so leave any feedback below for me. So when I was researching skillet lasagnas, I took 3 different recipes and kind of used them as guidelines, and I made this my own. But 2 out of the 3 of them said to use a cast iron skillet for this, but I also read that you're not supposed to use acidic foods in a cast iron skillet. So what do you think about this? Let me know below. In a separate bowl, I'm going to take half of my mozzarella cheese, so that would be about 1 cup, and then my 1 cup of ricotta cheese, and then I'm going to take a half teaspoon of garlic, a half teaspoon of parsley, and then a 1/4 teaspoon of red pepper flakes, which the red pepper flakes are optional. You can always add more or less. And then I'm just going to get that mixed together, and we're just going to set that aside until our pasta is done. Now that the ground turkey is cooked, we're going to go ahead and add in our spaghetti sauce. And I'm going to add a little bit of water to this jar so I can get out the rest of the sauce. And then we're going to add in our 2.5 cups of beef broth and our 8 ounces of bow tie pasta, and then just give that a stir. You're just going to let that simmer. Mine took about 15 minutes for all of the liquid to disappear and thicken up. And at that point, I'm going to take a spoon and just start dropping spoonfuls of my ricotta mozzarella mixture into my pasta. And I'm just going to lightly push that down into the pasta a little bit. Try to get it all over if you can. There might be a couple spots where you don't have very much ricotta, but that's okay. It will melt and it'll be really creamy and delicious. Now I'm going to take that last cup of mozzarella cheese that I have and just put that over the top. We're just going to let that sit and melt. If you have a lid that'll fit your pan, you should add that on top. I do not, so I just let mine go and it was fine, it melted. And then to top it off, I'm just going to add a little bit more parsley over the top. Here is a finished bowl. We did eat a little bit of Parmesan cheese on top as well. I didn't picture that, but this is so cheesy. This is probably one of my new favorites. And not to mention, much quicker than making your traditional lasagna. For my third dish I am sharing, this is Italian chicken zucchini pasta. It's actually supposed to be orzo, but I'll tell you about that in a minute. I have some frozen red bell pepper here. This is probably about a half of a red bell pepper. And then I have 1 small zucchini. I have a half of a yellow onion that I diced pretty fine. I have some salt, black pepper, red pepper flakes, oregano. Back there I am using this pasta. I have no idea how to pronounce this, but this is actually supposed to be orzo in this dish, but this is what I was given as a substitution, but we're going to make it work. And then I have some grated Parmesan cheese, 1 can of sliced carrots, and then this is an Italian style diced tomato. It also has seasonings in it as well, basil, garlic, and oregano. Just a little bit of extra seasoning in there, which will help out. And then some olive oil, minced garlic, chicken broth, and then I have 2 chicken breasts in this little bag right here. And then this is actually pesto that I froze in the freezer because I didn't use the entire jar. I didn't want it to go to waste, so I just put it in this little bag, and it froze very nicely and thawed very nicely as well. Starting off, I'm going to work on this chicken. I'm just going to pat this dry, and then as you can tell, this chicken is still partially frozen. Honestly, it is 10 times easier to cut when it is still a little bit frozen, so I honestly recommend doing that because when it's not frozen, it slides all over the place and it's just annoying. So I'm going to get that cut up into small cubes, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut up this red bell pepper. Like I said, this is probably half of a red bell pepper. I'm just going to cut that up super fine and just set that aside for right now. This zucchini was a little bigger than I wanted, so I'm actually only going to use about half of this zucchini. You can use the entire thing if you want to. I'm sure it would be just fine, but I just put the other half in the refrigerator and I will use it for something else. But I'm just going to slice this up into strips and then cut it into small little pieces. My husband really hates zucchini, so if I do put it in a dish, I try to make it really small and not that noticeable. But the original recipe has you just cut these into half moons, so you can kind of decide what you want to do with that. To my cast iron skillet, I added a little bit of olive oil, and I'm just going to go ahead and put my chicken in here. We're going to get that cooking, and then after you put the chicken in, you're going to go ahead and add in the onion, red bell pepper, and zucchini that we just chopped up, and then you're going to add your pesto, and I used approximately 3 tablespoons of pesto. I like to add a lot of pesto to this, so I was a little short. I probably would have added a little bit more, but again, you can do that to your own taste. If you want to add more in the end, you can totally do that as well, but I had about 3 tablespoons that I used today. I did quickly want to show you that these carrot slices are so big. I take a fork and I just kind of mash those around a little bit to kind of get them in smaller pieces. But before we add in the carrots, I'm going to add in about a tablespoon of minced garlic. Let that cook for just a minute before you add anything else in. Now I'm going to go ahead and add in my can of carrots and my can of diced tomatoes. Next, I'm just pouring in 2 cups of chicken broth and 1 cup of my pasta. Should be orzo, but like I said, this is my replacement. After you get that combined, go ahead and start adding your seasonings. I have 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, a 1/2 teaspoon of oregano, and 1/4 teaspoon of red pepper flakes. You can always add more seasonings in the end. I let this simmer for just under 15 minutes. You can keep extra water by you, and if your pasta is not soft enough, go ahead and add in a little bit more and just let it cook through again. But after you get your pasta done, you're going to add in a 1/2 cup of grated Parmesan cheese and mix it together. If you want to add more cheese than this, like shredded Parmesan or mozzarella, don't be afraid to add more or more seasonings. Like I said, this is one of my favorite meals to have. It doesn't look that appetizing, but I promise you it's very flavorful and it's packed with lots of veggies. Last but not least, we're making this creamy chicken cheese pasta. To start off here, I have 2 cups of milk, or you can use 1/2 and 1/2, whichever you have. And then I have 3 cups of water in this back measuring cup. There is about 12 ounces of these elbow noodles. Don't be afraid to use a different type of noodle. And then I have 1/2 of an onion and 1/2 of a green pepper. Both of those are going to get diced up. 1 bag of mild cheddar cheese. This is an 8-ounce bag. I have some cornstarch back here, along with some seasonings, oregano, salt, garlic, chili powder, black pepper, and parsley. And then these are 2 small chicken breasts that I just cubed up. And I'm going to go ahead and preheat my oven to 350. I added a little olive oil in here, and then once my pan was hot, I threw in my chicken, my onion, and my bell pepper. I also want to mention, if you don't want to use chicken for this, ground beef is also a great alternative. Next, I'm adding in 1 teaspoon of chili powder, a 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of garlic, and then 1 teaspoon of oregano. Don't be afraid to add more seasonings. You can do more chili powder if you want to have more of a chili taste, or more garlic if you'd rather have more of a garlic taste. So now we're going to add in a 1.5 tablespoons of cornstarch. I'm just going to mix this together, and then we are going to add in our 12 ounces of pasta. And then you're just going to need to pour in your 3 cups of water and 2 cups of milk and get that mixed up to combine. And then you're just going to let this simmer until your noodles are all done. My noodles took about 15 minutes to become tender, and I did stir this every once in a while to make sure that they were not sticking to the bottom of my skillet. Once my noodles were done, I added in half of the bag of shredded cheese. This was about 1 cup. I'm going to mix that together so it can start to melt. And then the other cup of cheese that is left in the bag, that's going to go right on top. And then you're just going to pop this in the oven for about 10 minutes. Once this came out of the oven, I added a little parsley on top, and then it was ready to serve. I do want to say that this is such a wonderful base recipe. You can change this up in so many different ways, make it your own. I think that this would be really good with extra chili powder next time. So anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and like I said, if you have any tips or advice about cast iron skillets, I would love to know. I will see you guys on Sunday.